On April 5, 1975, a conference entitled The Central Intelligence Agency and World Peace was held in New Haven, Connecticut, on the campus of Yale University. From the evening session of the conference, Hortensia Bussi de Allende, widow of assassinated President Salvador Allende of Chile, gives a first-hand account of the events leading to the fascist coup of September 1973. Since the coup in Chile, the Constitution has been suspended, Congress and political parties dissolved, and trade unions banned. She details CIA support of the military junta, which has resulted in the suspension of civil liberties along with death and imprisonment for thousands of Chileans. She will be heard in her native Spanish with simultaneous English translation. Hortensia Bussi de Allende.
En nombre del pueblo de Chile y en especial de los millares de hombres y mujeres que han perdido la vida, que se encuentran encarcelados o han sufrido la tortura de la dictadura militar, nuestra expresión de profundo agradecimiento por la calurosa invitación que me han formulado los universitarios de Yale y diversas instituciones para que me refiera a la CIA y al mundo de la paz.
Dear friends of the New Haven community, I want to thank you on behalf of the people of Chile, especially those people who have suffered prison, torture or death under the dreadful military dictatorship. We consider this invitation to talk about the CIA and world peace very important.
He llegado hasta aquí no sin vencer dificultades surgidas para impedir nuestro ingreso al territorio norteamericano. Si antes fuimos víctimas del boicot económico y de la subversión interna y externa, ahora se quiere imponer el complot del silencio, dirigido a mantener en la penumbra los hechos y los efectos de esa política intervencionista. De ahí que valorice la gran importancia de reuniones como esta.
I have arrived here not without difficulties to enter this country. If in the past we've suffered the economic boycott and the internal and external subversion, today they want to impose a conspiracy of silence, to keep the facts and the pernicious effects of the policies of intervention from being known. That is why we highly value this meeting.
Habéis denominado a este seminario la CIA y la paz. Nos parece que con propiedad pudo haberse llamado también la CIA y el fascismo contra la paz, pues a nadie escapa que hoy día la acción de la CIA está enfilada a impulsar el establecimiento de regímenes fascistas que en todo momento ponen en peligro el mantenimiento de la democracia y por ende la paz mundial.
You have named this seminar the CIA and Peace. We feel that it would be just as proper to call it the CIA and Fascism Against Peace. It is no longer a secret today that CIA activities are directed to stimulate the establishment of fascist regimes which are a constant threat to democracy and constantly to world peace.
Aparece como una cruel ironía de la historia el que este gran pueblo, que es el primero que se independiza en el continente americano, enarbolando la bandera de la autodeterminación de los pueblos, se exhiba hoy, por obra de sus dirigentes, como el paladín de la intromisión y como el sostenedor de regímenes títeres opuestos a la voluntad popular.
It appears a crude irony of history that this great nation, which was the first to gain its independence in the Western Hemisphere under the banner of the people's right to self-determination, should now be known, because of its leaders, as the champion of intervention and as the supporter of puppet regimes opposed to the people's will.
El capítulo relativo a la CIA y del imperialismo norteamericano en Chile no está ni con mucho cerrado. Recién se abre. Cada día surgen nuevos antecedentes ocultos hasta hoy al pueblo norteamericano y a la opinión pública internacional.
The chapter concerning CIA and North American imperialistic intervention in Chile is by no means closed. It is just beginning. Each day, we know of new facts which up to date have been hidden from the North American people and from international public opinion.
Es preciso levantar los secretos, develar los misterios que encubren las tortuosas maniobras de los grandes intereses económicos ejecutados por sus agentes a espaldas de un pueblo noble y bondadoso como el de los Estados Unidos.
It is necessary that these so-called secrets be known. It is necessary that the mysteries that envelop the monstrous maneuvers executed by the agents of the great economic interests hidden from the noble and generous people of the United States be revealed.
A este pueblo, ajeno a la complicidad, surgido en los rincones al amparo del dinero, yo llamo desde aquí para que exija la más pronta y absoluta clarificación de la intervención de su gobierno en la masacre fascista que ocurre en Chile. La intervención de los Estados Unidos comenzó antes en Chile, no solo en 1973, para impedir el triunfo del compañero presidente Salvador Allende, y que fue hecha a espaldas del pueblo y del Congreso norteamericano.
It is to these people of the United States, these people who are not implicated in this crime which is perpetrated by money interests, that I appeal to from here. I ask these people of the United States to insist that the intervention and responsibility in the fascist massacre which occurs in Chile be completely clarified and known. The intervention of the United States government started before the military coup in Chile, not only in September 1973. The object was to prevent Salvador Allende's victory. It was done at the back of the North American people and Congress.
Existe hoy confirmación plena y confesa de la participación de la CIA y del imperialismo en el proceso que culminó con el derrocamiento y muerte del presidente constitucional de Chile, Salvador Allende. Nuestro país representa entonces el símbolo, el ejercicio de la política agresiva de una nación poderosa, practicada al margen de las normas internacionales, en contra de un pequeño país que buscaba el camino de su real independencia por medios democráticos y en pleno ejercicio de la libertad.
Today, there is full and confessed confirmation of imperialism and CIA participation in the process culminating in the overthrow and death of the constitutional president of Chile, Salvador Allende. Our country now symbolizes a policy of aggression by a powerful country, violating all international norms against a small nation that was searching the road of its independence through free and democratic means.
Hoy están comprobados hasta la saciedad las constantes denuncias del gobierno de la Unidad Popular y del propio presidente Allende, quien en diciembre de 1972 señaló ante las Naciones Unidas: mi país es víctima de una grave agresión. Desde el momento mismo en que triunfamos electoralmente el 4 de septiembre de 1970, estamos afectados por el desarrollo de presiones externas de gran envergadura que pretendieron impedir la instalación de un gobierno libremente elegido por el pueblo y derrocarlo desde entonces. Se ha querido aislarnos del mundo, estrangular la economía, paralizar el comercio del principal producto de exportación, que es el cobre, casi el 80% de nuestras divisas, y privarnos al acceso de financiamiento internacional.
Today, President Allende's constant denunciations have proven to be true. Since 1972, in his speech before the United Nations, he declared, quote, "My country is the victim of a grave aggression and has been since the very moment of our electoral triumph on September the 4th, 1970. We are affected by the development of powerful external pressures which try to prevent the installation of a government freely elected by the people. and attempted to defeat it ever since. They have intended to isolate us from the world, strangle our economy, paralyze our commerce in our main export product, copper, and prevent our access to sources of international financial aid.
Y añadía en esa oportunidad el presidente Allende: estamos conscientes de que cuando denunciamos el bloqueo financiero y económico con que se nos agrede, tal situación aparece difícil de ser comprendida por la opinión pública internacional y aún por algunos de nuestros compatriotas, porque no se trata de una agresión abierta que haya sido declarada sin embozo ante la faz del mundo. Por el contrario, es un ataque siempre subterráneo, oblicuo, pero no por eso menos lesivo para Chile. Nos encontramos frente a fuerzas que operan en la penumbra, sin bandera, con armas poderosas apostadas en los más variados lugares de influencia. Desgraciadamente, esta denuncia dramática cayó en el vacío.
And President Allende continued on that occasion, quote, "We are conscious that when we denounce the economic and financial blockade, such a situation is not easily understood by the international public opinion, not even by some of our own countrymen, because it is not a declared open aggression without disguise before the face of the world. On the contrary, it is always an underground attack, indirect, but nonetheless damaging for Chile. We find ourselves faced with forces which operate in the shadows, without a flag, with powerful weapons, posted in the various places of influence." End of quote.
Se ha requerido de la muerte de un presidente, del asesinato masivo de 30.000 chilenos, del encarcelamiento de 100.000 personas, de la pérdida de todas las libertades públicas para que se hiciera luz sobre esta aberrante situación. El presidente Allende, en sus dramáticas y postreras palabras, lo había reafirmado desde el Palacio del Gobierno, envuelto en llamas. El capital foráneo, el imperialismo, unido a la reacción, creó el clima para que las Fuerzas Armadas rompieran su tradición, la que les enseñara el general Schneider y que reafirmara el comandante Araya, víctimas del mismo sector social que hoy estará en sus casas esperando con mano ajena reconquistar el poder para seguir defendiendo sus granjerías y sus privilegios.
Unfortunately, this dramatic warning fell on deaf ears. In order for it to come to light and draw attention, it has been necessary to kill a president, massacre 30,000 Chileans, imprison 100,000 people, and abolish all civil liberties. President Allende, in his last words, said it once again from inside the government palace, enveloped in flames. Quote, "Foreign capital and imperialism, allied with reaction, have created such a climate that the armed forces have broken with their traditions. Those traditions which General Schneider had taught them and Commander Araya reasserted. Both victims of the same social sector, of those same people who today will stay in their homes, waiting to reconquer power through the action of others in order to continue to defend their profits and privileges."
Las trágicas experiencias de los países subdesarrollados nos señalan que la intensidad y la amplitud de la acción de la CIA en ellos está directamente relacionada con la magnitud e importancia estratégica de los intereses norteamericanos y del grado de desarrollo y organización de los movimientos de liberación. En Chile se dieron simultáneamente las dos condiciones y ello explica el antiguo y nutrido prontuario de la CIA en Chile, que se extiende prácticamente a todas las actividades nacionales.
The tragic experience of underdeveloped countries shows that the intensity and scope of CIA action is in direct relation to the magnitude and strategic importance of North American interests and the level of development and organization of the liberation movements. In Chile, the two conditions developed simultaneously. That accounts for both the old and the new strategy of the CIA, extending into almost every national activity.
Con los antecedentes ahora públicos, se puede reconstituir en parte el nefasto itinerario de la agresión norteamericana en contra del pueblo de Chile. 1964. La CIA entrega $3 millones al Partido Demócrata Cristiano para apoyar a su postulante presidencial Eduardo Frei en contra del candidato popular Salvador Allende.
With the CIA history in Chile now partially revealed to the public, one can begin to reconstruct the abominable trail of North American aggression against our people. 1964, the CIA turned over $3 million to the Christian Democratic Party in order to help the presidential campaign of Eduardo Frei against the popular candidacy of Salvador Allende. 1969, on the eve of another presidential election, the CIA distributed $500,000, quote, in order to maintain those individuals who would sustain the anti-Allende forces, end of quote. 1970, another $500,000 are handed over to the leaders of the political parties opposing the candidacy of Allende. A meeting to analyze the possibilities of an Allende victory takes place with the attendance of John A. McGowan, a director of ITT and former director of the CIA, and Richard Helms, then acting director of the CIA. Henry Kissinger convokes an extraordinary meeting of the 40 Committee in which the CIA is authorized to distribute $400,000 among the press, radio, and television companies opposed to Allende. September 14, Harold S. Janine, president of ITT, proposes his plans to Kissinger to intervene in Chile, saying that he is, quote, prepared to help economically with sums up to 7 figures for operations that will preserve the interests of ITT in Chile, end of quote. On the 15th of September, the State Department authorizes Charles Corey, ambassador to Chile, to do everything possible to prevent Allende's assumption of the presidency. At the end of September, Richard Helms, director of the CIA, instructs William V. Brough of the CIA Clandestine Services Division for the Western Hemisphere to meet with Edward Garrity, vice president of ITT. In the meeting, they studied, quote, possible actions to apply economic pressure intended to prevent the ratification of Salvador Allende as president of Chile by the National Congress. Between September and October, the CIA spends $350,000 to bribe Chilean legislators against the imminent ratification of Allende as president. In October, General René Schneider, Commander-in-Chief of the Army, is assassinated. The purpose of the crime is to provoke the intervention of the armed forces and thus stop the congressional ratification of Allende. Among the plotters, we find Olalquiaga, a CIA agent born in Chile and residing in Venezuela, who makes a special trip to Chile during the days of the conspiracy. After Allende takes office, a meeting takes place between John McGowan and William Brough to examine, quote, contacts with selected members of the Chilean armed forces who would be able to lead some type of uprising, end of quote. Judy Kessler, an aid official in Santiago, in a memorandum to Dean R. Hinton, CIA economic analyst in the U.S. Embassy in Santiago, dated October the 2nd, presents the diverse long and short-range North American options for the destruction of the Popular Unity Government. The National Security Council, NSC, with authority over the CIA, approves the anti-Chile policy of the, quote, invisible blockade. In Chile, John B. Tipton and James E. Anderson are put in charge of directing the network of agents infiltrated into the parties of the left and of the right in accord with the following outline. Clandestine Operations Group, Robert G. O'Neill, Val Moss, Donald H. Winter, and Fred Shainer. Work Group Against Cuba, Socialist Countries and Foreign Residents in Chile, Alan D. Smith, Franklin Tonini, and Arnold M. Isaacs. Note, North American residents in Chile were controlled by the consular officials. In addition to those mentioned, Hattie Schlaudeman, now ambassador to Venezuela, John B. Tipton, Keith Wheelock, and Joseph F. McManus were also part of his network. Raymond Warren, local chief of the CIA, arrives in October. The network formed under his direction includes, among others, the following: Group of Operations and Communications, Propaganda and Psychological Warfare, Claude G. Villarreal, Paul L. Good, Dennis A. Allred. Paramilitary Operations Group, with links outside of Chile, Leo G. Karpov, Bolivia, David McGrath, Rio de Janeiro, Roberto L. Taylor, Bolivia, Clarice R. Halliwell, Sao Paulo. Military Intelligence, DIA, worked with the CIA, Lawrence A. Corcoran, William Hunn, James Switzer, Adrian Schreiber, and John Carrington with the Air Force, later decorated by Pinochet for his participation in the bombardment of the government palace and other targets. At the end of 1970, the 40 Committee, presided over by Henry Kissinger, authorizes the CIA to distribute $5 million for a, quote, destabilization effort, end of quote, against the government of President Allende to be used between 1971 and 1973. 1971, January, a special committee is formed under the auspices of ITT to pressure the United States government and influence International Credit Agency, and thus to threaten the Chilean government with economic chaos. Dean R. Hinton, specialist in the field of economic intelligence, plays an important role in coordinating the campaign for the economic chaos as director of AID in Chile. In 1971, he is called to the U.S. to fill a position on a subcommittee of the National Security Council charged with defining government policy regarding the nationalization of North American interests abroad. Today, Hinton has become ambassador to ZARE. In February, Nixon declares that the election of a socialist president in Chile can have profound implications for the inter-American system. In March, Howard C. Edwards is arrested by the Chilean police for his possible involvement in an international maneuver to cause a reduction in the price of copper. Edwards had participated in the Bay of Pigs invasion and had worked in Czechoslovakia during the 1968 occurrences. Frederick W. Latrache, AED official who participated in the fall of Jacobo Arbenz in Guatemala in 1954 and in the destruction of the Nkrumah government in Ghana in 1967, is named political director of the U.S. Embassy in Santiago. Patria y Libertad, Fatherland and Liberty, an ultra-rightist paramilitary organization, is formed in Chile under the operational experience of the CIA. The American Institute for Free Labor Development, AFELD, under the leadership of Robert O'Neill, Country Program Director for Chile, contributes to the formation of CUPROCH, Confederation of Chilean Professionals, an entity which was to play a decisive role in the truck owners and merchant strikes of 1972 and 1973. Edmundo Pérez Sukovich, ex-minister of the Interior in the Eduardo Frei government, is assassinated in June with the evident purpose of creating conditions for a coup d'etat. The VOP, Organized Vanguard of the People, a group said to be of the extreme left, was responsible for that crime. The group was infiltrated by Panamanian elements serving the CIA. Vice President of ITT, William C. Merriam, writes to Peterson, reiterating proposals intended to suffocate the Chilean economy through the rejection of international loans and suspension of the importation of copper and other goods. This was meant to create sufficient economic chaos to stimulate the intervention of the armed forces. He proposes that the CIA collaborate in this process. Secretary of State Rogers meets with representatives of Anaconda, Ford Motor Company, First National City Bank, Ralston Purina Company, and ITT. In the get-together, it is proposed to embargo spare parts and materials for Chile and to cut off all forms of North American aid. The United States changes its ambassador in Chile. The position is filled by Nathaniel P. Davis, who began his career as an official of the OSS, Office of Strategic Services, precursor of the CIA. He was formally assigned to Czechoslovakia, the Soviet Union, and Bulgaria, and he was also in Chile as head of the Peace Corps in 1963. Previous to his new appointment in Chile, he had been ambassador in Guatemala, the post he assumed immediately after the abduction and execution of his predecessor John Gordon Maine, and actually an ambassador for 14 South African countries. 1972, On March 21st, United States journalist Jack Anderson revealed the plans of ITT and the CIA against the Popular Unity government. The same journalist makes public a secret cable from Ambassador Nathaniel Davis to the State Department, which suggested that in preparation for a military coup, it is first necessary to create, quote, a discontent so profound that a military intervention would be warmly received, end of quote. The U.S. corporations operating in Chile resort to economic sabotage. Ford Motors suspends its activities and closes its plant. General Motors does likewise shortly thereafter. Ralston Purina is brought under state control when it becomes clear that it is deliberately reducing production. It is not paying custom taxes and is violating the law of international exchange. Kennecott and Anaconda obtain the embargo of Chilean products in the United States and freeze the accounts of the various Chilean governmental agencies in New York, some of which include those of the State Copper Corporation and the Production Development Agency Corfo. It becomes increasingly difficult for Chile to get parts and replacements for U.S.-produced machinery. The result is that 21% of the taxis and 31% of the public transportation becomes immobilized. Kennecott brings suit in France to block the payment for copper sales to the government of Chile. Private U.S. banks cut Chile's access to credit from $200 million to $35 million. They suspend all credits to suppliers. Wolf Research and Development, a, quote, privately, end of quote, owned U.S. corporation, proposes to Chile a series of research programs involving remote sensors placed in NASA satellites as part of the Earth and Skylight programs. The application of this technology for supposed research consists of terrain information, photographs, espionage flights, and air detection of mineral deposits. Juno Hubbins, ex-director of Life magazine, handed over $400,000 to Alvaro Puga of El Mercurio newspaper. The money was obtained by the CIA from the 40 Committee to finance propaganda against the Popular Unity government. In October, General Cesar Ruiz Danjó, Commander-in-Chief of the Air Force, travels to the U.S. invited by his counterpart, General John Ryan. From this trip, the Chilean Air Force obtained a $5 million credit. In contrast, the Popular Unity government in 3 years only received $3 million in credits from the United States. In 1972, no more than 13 to 20% of Chilean imports came from the U.S. compared with about 40% in preceding years. In the financial arena, the percentage of short-term credits which Chile received from the U.S. was reduced from 78 to 6.6%. On October 11 of this year, the first owner's strike is declared, preceded by a commercial shutdown and followed by the truck owners' lockout. These seditious activities were intended to paralyze the economy of the entire country for several weeks. This action just happened to coincide with the European embargo of Chilean copper as a result of Kennecott's legal maneuvers in France. The CIA, as revealed recently, financed the owners' shutdowns, inundating the black market with dollars. December 1972, Jorge Guerrero, Secretary of the National Command for Green Defense, which directed the owners' shutdown, is invited to Washington by Afeld. 1973, Alexander Sanders, ex-agent of the CIA, was able to escape to the U.S. and informs the Chilean authorities of the preparation of a military coup against the Popular Unity government. It was the so-called Centaur Plan. Sanders accompanied his denunciations with conclusive evidence, including intelligence report and taped materials. At the request of the CIA, and in order to finance the activities of the National Party and the Christian Democrats, the U.S. government provided $200,000 and $350,000 respectively. President Allende's naval attaché commander Arturo Araya Peters is assassinated in the early morning of July 27, 1973, by members of the ultra-rightist group Fatherland and Liberty, organized by the CIA 2 years before. On that same date, a new truck owners' strike starts that will include merchants and professionals. Simultaneously, a huge wave of terrorist actions spread all over the nation. A high-tension tower is blown up when President Allende is addressing the country on TV and radio. Patria y Libertad, Fatherland and Liberty, backed by the CIA, did not conceal its responsibility in this affair. The Chilean Naval Intelligence Service contributed to the effort with logistic advice. Michael Townley, a North American citizen and member of the Peace Corps in Chile during President Frey's government, returns to Chile as a CIA agent to collaborate with Fatherland and Liberty. He was in charge of a 5-man brigade to carry out a dangerous sabotage operation in the city of Concepcion at a power plant. Although they failed in their objective, they killed the night watchman of the plant, Tomás Enriquez. Townley managed to escape to Argentina and from there flew to the US. Paulo Rodriguez, head of Fatherland and Liberty, visited the US and made contacts with Bernard Barker, Frank Sturgis, and the counter-revolutionary Cubans, Virgilio González and Eugenio Martínez, who had participated in the espionage and robbery of documents from the Chilean embassy in Washington a year earlier. On May 15th, the Union of Professional Employees from the El Teniente copper mine started a strike. The mine had been expropriated from Connecticut. This strike is directed by Guillermo Medina, who is directly advised by the AFELD, as well as by Fatherland and Liberty leaders, such as Manuel Fuentes Wedling, presently press attaché to General Gustavo Lee. On June 29, a tentative coup is defeated. It is led by the Armed Regiment No. 2 and by civilians from Fatherland and Liberty. Paulo Rodriguez and other leaders of this fascist group sought refuge in the embassy of Ecuador and left the country. It is thought that the June 29 attempted coup was so poorly mounted because of a failure of communication between the CIA, directly linked with Fatherland and Liberty, and the DIA, the Pentagon's Defense Intelligence Agency, which was working with the Chilean military traitors. In August 1973, the CIA is authorized to invest $1 million additional in Chile. It is held that this allocation was canceled when the coup took place. The truth is that the sum was spent, as has been publicly acknowledged. $250,000 of it went for a radio station. Thousands of dollars were used to finance public relation trips of junta officials shortly after the coup. The rest is not yet accounted for. The U.S. ambassador to Chile, Nathaniel Davis, travels to the U.S. to meet with a special group of the National Security Council dealing with Chile. He comes back to Santiago just before the coup. In September 1973, ships from the U.S. Navy arrive in Chilean waters to participate in the joint maneuvers called Operación Unitas. At the same time, 32 U.S. observation and battle planes land in Mendoza, Argentina. 15 of the planes leave 48 hours after the coup. Simultaneously, 150 North Americans, described as, quote, specialists in air acrobatics, end of quote, arrive in Chile. On September 9, Richard Nixon is informed about plans for the military coup in Chile.
«11 de septiembre. Estalla el golpe militar. Es derrocado el gobierno popular. Muere asesinado el presidente Allende y se instaura en Chile la dictadura fascista».
September the 11th. The military coup takes place. The popular government is overthrown. President Allende is murdered, and the fascist dictatorship is installed.
Se revela que los buques de guerra norteamericanos que habían acudido a la maniobra UNITAS estuvieron listos para intervenir en favor de los golpistas en el caso de que estos hubieran encontrado resistencia.
The fact that the U.S. warships of the UNITAS maneuvers were standing by ready to help in case they were needed was disclosed.
Se anuncia asimismo que el día del golpe operó en Chile el avión tipo WD-575, matrícula 631-2398, comandado por los mayores Dueñas y Schul de la United States Air Force. Este avión operó como una verdadera estación volante y sirvió de coordinador a los golpistas en el sistema de comunicaciones.
Another fact is revealed and denounced, that the day of the coup, the WB-575 plane, plate number 6312398, was operated in Chile by Majors V. Dueñas and T. Schul from the U.S. Air Force. This plane was a flying electronic control station serving to coordinate the communications of the Putschis. The German magazine Neu Berliner Illustrator of December 25, 1973 states that they have a confidential U.S. Army document taken from a vault at Fort Gulick, Panama, outlining a plan to destroy the Popular Unity government. The U.S. plan revealed in Germany has characteristics very similar to the events of September 11th.
Con la colaboración de la CIA y la ayuda de expertos brasileros, alemanes, entre estos últimos Walter Rauff, antiguo jefe de la Gestapo y creador de los camiones cámaras de gas, se crea a fines de año el Departamento de Inteligencia Nacional, la DINA, dependiente del Ministerio de Defensa, y es la que hace los interrogatorios a los presos políticos y la que tortura y asesina.
With the collaboration of the CIA, the DIA, and the help of the Brazilians and German experts such as Walter Rauff, former leader of the Gestapo, the man responsible for developing Hitler's mobile gas extermination units, Chile's National Department of Investigations, DINA, comes into existence under the Defense Ministry. DINA is responsible for most of the tortures and crimes in Chile.
Amigos, lo que ustedes han oído es una reseña muy somera de la abierta intervención norteamericana en los asuntos de Chile hasta 1973. En la etapa posterior, los hechos son más conocidos, porque ningún acontecimiento ocurrido en los últimos tiempos como la barbarie implantada en Chile hirió tanto la sensibilidad mundial y produjo repudio tan unánime en todos los rincones del mundo. Así también, ningún gobierno está tan desprestigiado y moralmente aislado como la junta militar fascista en Chile.
What you have heard is a very short resume of open North American intervention in Chile's internal affairs up to 1973. What has occurred since the coup is more widely known. No events in recent times have so wounded international sensitivity as the barbarism taking place in my country. These events have been unanimously repudiated in every corner of the world. No government is so completely discredited and morally isolated as the military junta of Chile.
En 1974, la sed de sangre de los militares golpistas se extendió fuera de las fronteras, al perpetrar en Buenos Aires, Argentina, el cobarde asesinato del general Carlos Prat y de su esposa. Los métodos gangsteriles prohijados por la CIA alcanzan ahora a aquellos que los fomentaron y los practicaron. El desaparecimiento del general Óscar Bonilla, presumible sucesor del dictador Pinochet, en un helicóptero enviado por el comandante en jefe del ejército, tiene el sello y la firma de los procedimientos que utilizó Hitler para eliminar a posibles competidores.
In 1974, the Putschis' thirst for blood has extended even beyond the frontiers to Buenos Aires, Argentina, to carry out the cowardly assassination of General Carlos Prats and his wife. The gangster methods adopted through the CIA now boomerang on their own practitioners. The disappearance of General Oscar Bonilla, presumed successor to dictator Pinochet, who fell with a helicopter, carries the trademark of the methods used by Hitler to eliminate his possible competitors.
Al cumplirse un año y medio del golpe militar en Chile, lo que hace aún más grotesco y repugnante el papel desempeñado por una camarilla fascista es precisamente la confirmación absoluta de la participación de la CIA y del imperialismo en el proceso de liquidación del anhelo liberacionista de un pueblo.
As grotesque and repugnant as the role played by the fascist junta, 1 year and a half after the coup, we have absolute confirmation of the participation of the CIA and imperialism in the liquidation process against the longings of a people for liberation.
Si bien es cierto que la responsabilidad de tales hechos recae sobre las anteriores administraciones de los Estados Unidos, en especial sobre Nixon, el actual presidente, ante el asombro y estupor de la opinión pública mundial, ha declarado que tal política se llevó a cabo, comillas, en aras de los mejores intereses del pueblo chileno y ciertamente del de los Estados Unidos, cierre comillas. Esto quiere decir también que el actual gobierno de los Estados Unidos proclama abiertamente el derecho a intervenir por cualquier medio, sin importarle cuán ilícitos, sucios o criminales en los procesos internos de los pueblos de este hemisferio, siempre que sus intereses lo hagan aconsejable.
As surely as the responsibility for such deeds falls upon the previous administration of the United States, especially upon Nixon, the current president has astonished world public opinion by declaring that the policy was carried out, quote, in the best interests of the Chilean people and certainly of the United States, end of quote. That is to say that the present government of the U.S. openly proclaims the right to intervene by whatever means, no matter how illicit, dirty, or criminal they may be, in the internal processes of the people of this hemisphere, whenever their monetary interests make it seem advisable.
En septiembre del año pasado, al reconocer y confesar la intromisión norteamericana en Chile, el presidente Ford argumentó que ello se hizo para ayudar a la preservación de los medios de comunicación opositores y de los partidos de oposición.
In September of last year, when President Ford recognized and confessed the North American intervention in Chile, he argued that it was done to help save the communications media of the opposition parties.
Por su parte, y como es sabido, el señor Henry Kissinger manifestó ante el Senado, comillas, que las actividades secretas de la CIA en Chile habían tenido por objeto impedir el establecimiento de un gobierno de partido único por un presidente minoritario, cierre comillas.
For his part, as is well known, Henry Kissinger told the U.S. Senate that, quote, the activities of the CIA had as their object the prevention of the establishment of a one-party government by a minority president, end of quote.
Surge la interrogante, ¿dónde está ahora la preocupación de los señores Ford y Kissinger cuando en Chile han sido suprimidos todos los partidos políticos, abolidas todas las libertades públicas, cerrado el Congreso Nacional y convertido el país en un muestrario de campos de concentración?
The question arises, where is the concern of Mr. Ford and of Mr. Kissinger now, when all political parties have been suppressed, all public liberties abolished, the National Congress has been closed down, and the country has been converted into a showcase of concentration camps?
El fundamento que pretende justificar la intervención es la necesidad de defender la democracia. Este argumento, que careció de base durante el gobierno de la Unidad Popular, adquiere ahora plena vigencia bajo la dictadura fascista de la Junta. Sin embargo, observamos que en este momento el único país desarrollado cuyo gobierno apoya política, financiera y militarmente a la tiranía es el de los Estados Unidos.
The attempt to justify this intervention has been based on what is called a need to defend democracy. This argument lacked any base at all during the years of the Popular Unity government, but acquires full validity today under the junta's fascist dictatorship. Nevertheless, we observe that the only industrialized country whose government helps that tyranny politically, financially, and militarily is the United States.
De lo anterior, no puede sino concluirse que el objetivo real perseguido por la política intervencionista del gobierno de los Estados Unidos era el de implantar una dictadura de corte fascista que garantizara lo que las compañías transnacionales llaman la paz social, comilla, o el clima favorable para la inversión extranjera, la paz de los cementerios, que la Junta Militar ha implantado con la colaboración del gobierno de los Estados Unidos, es la paz social a que justamente aspiran aquellas empresas transnacionales.
One can only conclude that the true objective of the United States interventionist policy has been to install a fascist model government that would ensure what the transnational companies call, quote, the social peace in a climate favorable to foreign investment, end of quote. The peace of the cemetery created by the military junta is exactly the social peace sought after by those same transnational corporations.
Porque está claro que el intervencionismo practicado en Chile es solo un caso particular de una política general de intervención, apoyo y colusión entre el gobierno de Estados Unidos y los intereses de los inversionistas norteamericanos en el exterior, en especial las compañías multinacionales, ITT, Kennecott, Anaconda Copper, etc.
It is clear that the intervention practiced in Chile is only one single case in a general policy of intervention and collusion between the U.S. government and the interests of North American investment abroad, especially those of the multinational companies, ITT, Kennecott, Anaconda, etc., etc.
Esta conducta gendarmeril, que lleva implícita el objetivo de instalar regímenes fascistas en los países subdesarrollados, no solo viola conocidas normas que rigen las relaciones entre los Estados Unidos, instituidas en la Carta de las Naciones Unidas, sino que además se contradice nuevamente con los ideales por los cuales ha luchado el pueblo norteamericano desde su independencia.
This pig-headed, police-like conduct carries the implicit objective of installing fascist regimes in underdeveloped countries and not only violates recognized norms governing relation between states, institutionalized in the Charter of the United States Nations, but moreover, clearly contradicts those ideals for which the people of the United States have fought ever since their independence.
Este conflicto entre los intereses del pueblo norteamericano y la política de intromisión en el exterior explica la circunstancia de que el gobierno haya tenido que recurrir a engaños y caer en contradicciones cada vez más evidentes para justificar ante los ciudadanos de su país cada una de estas acciones. ¿Cómo puede el gobierno norteamericano convencer a su pueblo de que el terror y la barbarie que se vive en Chile es compatible con los ideales e intereses de la gran mayoría de los ciudadanos norteamericanos, cuando en marzo de 1973 la Unidad Popular y su gobierno obtuvieron el 44% de la población, de la votación, perdón?
This conflict between the real interests of the North American people and the policy of foreign intervention explains the deception of the U.S. government. In the effort to justify this duplicity to the citizens of the United States, the leaders of the government find themselves in increasingly clear and difficult contradictions. How can the U.S. government possibly convince its people that the barbarism and terror in Chile is compatible with the ideals and interests of the great majority of North American citizens?
¿Cómo puede el gobierno norteamericano convencer a su pueblo de que la asociación entre la CIA y la ITT, empresa que colabora con los nazis en la Segunda Guerra Mundial, mientras los soldados de Estados Unidos caían en los frentes europeos luchando contra el fascismo, puede contribuir al fortalecimiento de la democracia en Chile?
How can the North American government try to convince its people that the association between the CIA and ITT, a corporation that collaborated with the Nazis during the Second World War, even as US soldiers were dying on European fronts in the fight against fascism, can contribute to the strengthening of democracy, either in Chile or in the United States?
¿Hasta cuándo el presidente Ford apoya a la Junta Militar Fascista de Chile, otorgándole créditos financieros y militares superiores a nuestro gobierno de la Unidad Popular?
When will President Gerald Ford put an end to support of the fascist military junta, offering financial credits and military aid beyond anything ever dreamed of by our government of popular unity?
¿Cómo puede el gobierno norteamericano convencer a su pueblo que para alcanzar los ideales de Lincoln es necesario apoyar a las fuerzas tenebrosas que buscan la implantación del fascismo a nivel mundial, incluido Estados Unidos?
How can the U.S. government convince its people that in order to fulfill the ideals of Abraham Lincoln, it is necessary not to help those sinister forces which seek to establish fascism on a worldwide scale, making no exception of the United States?
La reacción de parte de los norteamericanos frente a las revelaciones de la actuación de la CIA fuera y dentro de los Estados Unidos nos demuestra que existe en este país reservas morales que le impiden abdicar de sus ideales libertarios por los que se han batido muchas generaciones de ciudadanos. El pueblo norteamericano parece comenzar a entender que no es posible apoyar al fascismo en el exterior sin exponerse a que éste se apodere del propio Estados Unidos.
The reaction of the U.S. people to the revelations of CIA activity both abroad and within the United States shows us that there is a reserve of moral power that can prevent abdication of those ideals of liberty which have been fought for by generations of citizens. It appears that the North American people are beginning to understand that it is impossible to help fascism abroad without becoming exposed to those same forces inside the United States.
Al procurar legitimar la descarada violación del respeto mutuo entre los estados, sean estos poderosos o débiles, el presidente Ford ha lanzado la Carta a las Naciones Unidas al cesto de los papeles inútiles y procura establecer la ley de la selva en el plano de las relaciones internacionales. Los pueblos de América Latina, de Vietnam, de Laos, de Camboya, han sido víctimas de esta política que con un saldo sangriento practicara otrora el nazifascismo y que hoy tiene el triste privilegio de renovar Estados Unidos.
In order to legitimize the shameless violation of mutual respect between nations, whether they be powerful or not, President Ford has thrown the Charter of the United Nations in the wastebasket and tries to raise the law of the jungle to the plane of international relations. The peoples of Latin America, of Vietnam, of Laos, of Cambodia have been the victims of practices in the bloody tradition of Nazi fascism. Today, the United States has the sad privilege of breathing new life into those traditions.
Más, cuando menos un precio ha debido pagar el imperialismo al desencadenar la agresión en contra del gobierno popular que presidiera Salvador Allende. El de despertar o fortalecer la conciencia de los pueblos y de muchos gobiernos acerca de la amenaza real del fascismo como nuevo esquema de dominio en nuestra época. De allí el extenso y profundo movimiento de solidaridad internacional por la causa del pueblo chileno que representa una respuesta al más incalificable atropello a la dignidad y a los derechos humanos en un país pequeño y expresa además el reconocimiento de que se trata de una situación que compromete a toda la humanidad.
At least imperialism has begun to pay a price for unleashing its aggression against the Popular Unity government presided over by Salvador Allende. The price is the awakening and strengthening of the consciousness of the peoples and of many governments about the direct threat of fascism as a new pattern of domination in our epoch. With that, we have witnessed the extensive and profound growth of a movement in solidarity with the Chilean people. This movement represents an answer to a terrible outrage against the human rights and dignity of a small nation and expresses furthermore the recognition that we are dealing with a situation that endangers all of humanity.
El drama chileno no solo resume las contradicciones de la sociedad chilena y latinoamericana, sino también las del tercer mundo en general. El caso de Chile conforma la liquidación, aunque momentánea, de una nación que llevaba adelante un proceso de emancipación. Ello nos señala que los países del tercer mundo, las naciones no alineadas, constituyen y constituirán la meta principal de la agresión imperialista.
The Chilean drama not only encompasses the contradictions of Chilean and Latin American society, but those of the Third World in general. In the case of Chile, we have the liquidation, although momentary, of a nation which has carried forward a process of emancipation. This points out to us that it is the nations of the Third World, the unaligned nations, which are and which will continue to be the principal targets of imperialistic aggression.
Quiero aprovechar la ocasión para agradecer a cada uno de ustedes sus esfuerzos y a las instituciones a que ustedes pertenecen para hacer claridad sobre la agresión al pueblo de Chile. Queremos expresar también en forma especial nuestro reconocimiento a los ciudadanos norteamericanos, que en todo momento han expresado una decidida solidaridad moral y efectiva con las víctimas de la tiranía. Aplaudimos la iniciativa de distinguidos políticos de esta nación que rechazan la anunciada visita a Chile del secretario de Estado Henry Kissinger, que significa un respaldo a la junta militar y la legitimación de un régimen que viola todos los derechos humanos.
Through you, we address the people of the United States. We wish to take this opportunity to thank you for your efforts to unmask the aggression being waged against the Chilean people. We would also like to express in a very special way our recognition of the efforts of those fine North Americans who have demonstrated their convictions in effective and moral solidarity with the victims of the tyranny. We applaud the initiatives of those distinguished political leaders who reject the announced visit to Chile by Secretary of State Henry Kissinger. His visit not only signifies support to the junta, but also serves to legitimize a regime which violates all human rights. In a responsible manner, we would also like to offer the warning that when fascism is flushed from our country, the Chilean people will disown and reject absolutely whatever accords, whatever pacts, whatever treaties agreed to by the military junta with whatever state or international organism.
Finalmente, es nuestro deber apelar a la conciencia del pueblo norteamericano para que impida que su gobierno continúe respaldando al régimen más sangriento que haya conocido la historia de América Latina, la dictadura de Augusto Pinochet.
Finally, it is our duty to appeal to the conscience of the North American people to prevent the continued support of your government for the most bloody regime that has been known in the history of Latin America, the dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet.
El pueblo norteamericano no puede seguir haciéndose cómplice de una política contraria a sus propios intereses y en consecuencia debe exigir la suspensión de toda la ayuda militar a la Junta, la suspensión de todos los créditos, la no renegociación de la deuda externa, la defensa de los derechos humanos en Chile.
The North American people cannot continue as accomplices in a policy contrary to their own best interests. Consequently, the demand must resound for the suspension of all military aid to the junta, suspension of all the credits, against any renegotiation of the external debt, and for the defense of human rights in Chile.
Frente al peligro tangible del fascismo, las llamadas mayorías silenciosas deben convertirse en mayorías activas por la democracia. En palabras de nuestro gran poeta, que despierte el leñador: eres hermosa y ancha Norteamérica, vienes de humilde cuna como una lavandera, junto a tus ríos blanca edificada en lo desconocido, es tu paz de panal lo dulce tuyo, es tu paz lo que amamos, no tu máscara, no es hermoso tu rostro de guerrero.
Confronting this tangible danger of fascism, the so-called silent majority must convert itself to an active, thundering majority for democracy. In Pablo Neruda's words, we quote, let the rail splitter awake. You are vast and beautiful North America. Your origin is humble like a washerwoman's, beside your rivers, white. Shaped in the unknown, it is your peace of honeycomb that is most sweet. It is your peace that we love, not your mask. Your warrior's face is not handsome.
La lucha contra el fascismo en Chile es una lucha contra los peligros del fascismo en el mundo entero. Por eso podemos decir con toda convicción, venceremos.
The fight jamás será vencido. El pueblo unido 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 jamás será vencido.
Hortensia Bussi de Allende, widow of assassinated President Salvador Allende of Chile, speaking before a conference on the Central Intelligence Agency, recorded April 5, 1975, in New Haven, Connecticut, on the campus of Yale University. For more information on the Central Intelligence Agency, contact Center for National Security Studies, 122 Maryland Avenue Northwest, Washington, D.C., 2002. This program was produced at radio station WWUH in West Hartford, Connecticut.